Today I thought I'd do a little video on sharpening the skew. I use the skew a lot. I probably have about 10 of them in different sizes and shapes. I'm always playing with angles and cutting, trying to learn more about it. So I thought I'd show you how I sharpen them. First thing I do when I'm using my platform is I have a jig that I set up that allows me to set the platform in exactly the right height every time. To make one of these, you just simply cut out a little circle, you lay it on the stone at the right angle, and you scribe a line with your pencil, and then you cut out these marks. And then I go in and turn the stone on and actually burn the edge a little bit so that I know it's set exactly the same every time. You'll notice I also milled a groove in my one-way platform. This rides in the groove and lets me slide it back and forth and get a consistent angle. Turn the grinder on and simply ride it across it a couple times until I've refreshed my honing angle. Let's do the other side. And that gives me a hollow grind. I hope you can see this. What this gives me is a slight hollow grind, and that will make it much easier to use my diamond hones to get to the edge. I don't grind all the way to the very edge. I leave just a little bit of a flat surface on the top and bottom. Now I think if you didn't have a way to mill a slot in here, you could make a jig just like this one that has a piece of metal on the front, and that simply rides on the front and slides back and forth. This is an oval skew that I have had for a long time, and I made a jig that has a little bit of an oval ground in there so that it sets flat on my stone as well. Now another good way to sharpen, if you have the one-way sharpening system, is with this their skew sharpening gauge. What it does is sits on the platform like that, and then you simply take the tool and you put it in one side, and it lays against the stone, and you run it back and forth. And you mount it in the other side, and you run it back and forth. And that gives me the same hollow grind that I can sharpen later. The reason I prefer my platform to this one is it's very easy to rock the tool back and forth. And when you rock it back and forth, this angle changes across here on both sides. So eventually, after you've sharpened your skew a whole bunch of times, one side's longer than the other if you don't pay a lot of attention. And my flat platform eliminates that. Now I sharpen my skews at a lot of different angles in order to experiment. The one I like the most is my Thompson skew that I sharpen at 40-degree bevel. That's 40 degrees measured from one bevel to the other bevel. Some of the pros recommend 25 degrees. I have skews at 35 degrees. I find a 35 or 45 degree angle to be a little more forgiving, very good for beginners and people learning to use the skew. When you're very skilled and you want a really, really clean cut, you might go to the 25 degrees. To hone my skew, I use these diamond paddles. They come in coarse, which is about 180 grit, medium, which is about 270, fine, which is about 600, and ultra fine, which is 1200. I don't usually have to sharpen with the coarse unless it's really worn out. But what I do is I lay it on the bevel. It's going to set perfectly flat. So what I'll do then is I'll just simply rub it so it's touching both of those sides. And I do that until I can feel a burr raising on the full back side. Once I feel the burr on the back side, I turn the tool over and I sharpen from the other side until I can once again feel that burr. And usually it takes longest with the first stone, so take your time and do it right and really get it to where you can feel that good strong burr on both sides. Then be sure and sharpen the top and the bottom. Now the bottom one's a radius, so I kind of roll a little bit. Top one's flat. Once I have that done, I go to the 600. And normally once you've got the coarse stone working for you, it's very quick to change over. You can feel the burr fairly quickly. If you do this on a regular basis while you're turning, you don't have to stop and go back to the medium. You can usually just touch it up lightly with the ultra fine. And don't forget to strop the top. These are your corner cutting edges that are very important. Now if you want the best edge, You can make yourself a leather strop. I just glued some leather. I rub this green stone that I get from Lee Valley, and I just do the same thing. To keep from rounding over the edge, don't go like this. You want to actually think of it going in this direction. So lay it on there so it's flat, and push it up. Lay it on there so it's flat, push it up. That way you get a very, very clean, very sharp edge that'll shave hair. For those of you who have the wet wheel grinders would find it probably much easier to use these. I save mine for carving tools and use the other grinders for my lathe tools. But you would simply use the same kind of platform, or you can buy the one they sell. Slide it up till it's touching the bevel at the appropriate angle, and you can lock these down if you want. Go to the other side and do the same thing. And then, of course, you can go over to the strop and simply power strop it, which is the attachment that I use most often. I can usually strop a tool 3 or 4 times during a turning and not have to go back to using the diamond hones for quite a while. Now, if you happen to have access to a belt sander, that's also a good method for sharpening a skew. It leaves a flat bevel rather than a concave bevel. So I've been experimenting with what's called a radius bevel. Ellie Avasari teaches that method, and I've been trying to learn what the pros and cons are of that type of skew. So I sharpen those on here, and I do that simply by touching the bevel and lifting the handle. That usually leaves a very slight burr on one side. When I finish, I'll go back and touch that burr up with one of the diamond hones real quick. Well, I hope that's been some help to you. There are, of course, a lot of other ways to sharpen a skew. This is just a way that worked out for me over the years. I tried a lot of other methods, and this seemed to be a very precise way to do it, even though it's probably not the fastest. But the nicest thing about having a sharp skew is how it cuts. What a nice polished surface.